busted down her door, and they had a tank in the front yard. This is the kind of thing we're going to see more and more often, but we're going to see less of it if people like the mother, Rachel Garman, stands up and tells these people enough's enough.
Well, you're right. Continuing here, there's no doubt they're running the hoax that it's illegal to not vaccinate. What's your view on that attempted fraud?
Well, you're able to perpetuate that fraud simply by the fact that parents aren't educating themselves. The main reason that I'm where I am right now is because I didn't educate myself. I trusted the doctors. That's why I'm in the position I am in now. But a lot of parents are waking up due to your show and websites and Dr. Tenpenny and everybody out there doing what they're doing. They're educating the parents, and parents are starting to realize slowly but surely that this is not the case. It is not law. If you're an educated parent, they're not going to try to bully you into vaccinating. My school district right now sends, for all 3 of my kids that are still in school, they send me the signed exemption forms and just ask me to sign them and send them back. No other parent that's not educated will they do that to. They will simply tell them no shots, no school, that's it. If you're educated, they're more than willing to acquiesce.
I've talked to countless parents that call and say, they're going to kick my child out and charge me for truancy. And I say, wait a minute, they're going to kick them out and charge them with truancy. There's a waiver. And they'll say, really? They'd lie to me, the school nurse, the principal? And I say, what state are you in? I'm in Tennessee. I'm in California. Type in California exemption. They type it in. They go, there it is. They're lied to me. And they go in and say, here's the form. I know you have it in that file cabinet. And they go, oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, that shows... if they're lying about this, what else are they lying about? I mean, that's super creepy. They can get so many people to lie.
The school districts actually get money for 100% vaccinated kids. For each child that is vaccinated per the CDC schedule, a lot of these school districts get money for that. Now, where do you think that money's coming from? It's not from the taxpayers. It's from the pharmaceutical industry.
Which we have a clip up on the website. If you just type in Bayer found guilty for HIV in blood, MSNBC reported on it years ago. They knowingly for a decade shipped out factor VIII with hepatitis and HIV in it, a death sentence to tens of thousands in Canada alone, the U.S. and Europe, of hemophiliacs. And it came out in court. They just didn't care. I mean, that level of absolute evil is just hard to deal with.
Well, when you look at the very beginning of the whole mercury issue with autism, the Simpsonwood, the CDC held a secret meeting at Simpsonwood in Georgia at a Methodist compound, for that matter, a Methodist camp. And it was right there in the documentation that we had to retrieve from Freedom of Information Act that these doctors were saying, oh my God, we had no idea there was so much mercury in this. And there was actually documentation of one of those doctors that were sitting on that panel that rushed to the telephone to call his pregnant daughter and say, do not vaccinate my grandchild. But yet they covered it up for everybody else out there.
Well, that's right. In fact, it was 2001 that ABC News finally broke the transcripts of that, where the head of it saying, don't give this to your children, grandchildren. This is it. We have caused massive brain damage, but we got to cover it up. I mean, this came out in Congress. This came out in congressional reports. Of course, we reported on it before ABC News was forced to. So the system knows. I mean, they know, and their answer is just full steam ahead.
Well, they've got to, because when you start looking at the mainstream media, if you will, which is why I love the internet, the alternative media, yours and others, because you're not bound by that. When you sit down and you watch a program, especially a news program, any time of the day, what do you see 2/3 of the time? You see pharmaceutical ads. Now, they are not going to bite the hand that feeds them. They are not going to say vaccines are dangerous. They're not going to say that Lipitor is dangerous, because that's what pays the bills.
You're right, and they've got an agenda to basically debilitate everybody and then sell us the treatments for what they've done. Let's get into your story from your own experience. What happened to your son?
Well, the main reason I do this, the main reason for the last 6 years that I've been out there going to the conferences, talking, my YouTube channel, my website, everything, is because I don't want parents to go through what my wife and I did. We took a walking, talking, beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby boy, walked him into the doctor's office. He had had some ear infections that I believe were caused by earlier vaccines. So he hadn't been able to catch up on his vaccines. So the doctor said, you got to get him caught up. We brought him in. He got 6 vaccines in one day, a total of 9 different viruses and antigens in those vaccines for 9 different diseases, 6 shots in one day, literally within an hour, the high fever, within 2 days, exploding diarrhea that, by the way, lasted 4.5 years. Stopped talking, stopped walking, distended belly, the classical MMR reaction that you hear about from Dr. Wakefield. He had it all. He didn't speak another word until he was 5.5 years old.
By the way, Dr. Wakefield, I talked to him today. He is now suing the British Medical Journal propaganda arm that came out and ran the hoax that he made all that research up when it turns out there had been all this separate research. Just amazing, the crisis that they've basically helped push. Continue, though, with what happened with your son after that, and the doctor that was part of this. He actually had a soul and actually started to wake up. Well,
yeah. Basically what happened is after about a year or 2 after the injury of my wife begging doctors, begging anybody she could talk to, what is wrong with my son? One of the therapists that was working with our son in the preschool type therapy thing that the state helps out with developmentally disabled children, said, you really need to talk to this other mom, and gave her the number, said, I'm really not supposed to do this, but here's the number of this mom you need to talk to. And when my wife contacted her, she said, yeah, your child's vaccine injured. You need to get your butt over here. And they talked, and it just opened up the world, something that doctors refused to tell us. There's no hope for your child. We were told your daddy's a big guy. His daddy's a big guy. So by the time he gets too much older, you're going to have to institutionalize him. And that was what we got. 4.5 years of diarrhea. It was, well, that's just autism. If we had had a child with 4.5 years of diarrhea that was just perfectly normal otherwise, we would have been sent to CPS for not taking care of our children.
Well, think about this, though. They know, studies have come out, that Crohn's, that's now epidemic, autoimmune response in the gut, connected to the measles shots. They know all this. I've had countless scientists, medical doctors, they've known for 30, 40 years. And here's this epidemic from what, 1 in 25,000 20-something years ago to 1 in 68 now. In South Korea, it's like 1 in 45. I mean, it is getting crazy. I mean, when I went to high school, there was a tiny little building for the autistic kids. Now it's some areas 1/3 of the school. I go to the park, there's autistic children everywhere. This isn't overdiagnosis. You go take your kids to the movies, they're just, the poor children are everywhere. And the doctors, as you said, will not tell them because they don't want to admit it's their system. They don't want to admit it's a viral infection. They don't want to admit it's the guts where all the bacteria and everything's at, going through an autoimmune response trying to get rid of this poison. They don't want to admit that, just like when you're nauseous, you can't think or speak. When you have the flu, that this child is in a torture chamber. They don't want to tell you about antibiotic treatments. They don't want to tell you about all the other, gut flushes. They don't want to tell you this because now it's coming out. You can reverse it. And then, oh my God, if it isn't something genetic or whatever, then it's got to be caused by something. And I read about the lucky children are the ones that start convulsing right there after the shot, because then at least they don't blame the parents, when they have autoimmune response and bleeding on the brain and say, you shook your baby. I mean, what happened when this starts happening to your son? Walking, talking, happy, great, boom. Just living hell starts. I mean, at first, did the doctor deny it, or I guess you didn't know what was going on?
We had no idea what was going on. In fact, we were so brainwashed, we never even considered the vaccines until my wife met this other mom. And from there it took off. We started researching. We started looking at different options. We started realizing that there's a whole community of parents out there that are healing their children due to the inattention and ineffectiveness of the medical industrial complex. They decided on their own, we're going to find the few doctors out there that will listen, and we're going to do this on our own, and we're going to prove to these doctors what they've done. And that's basically what's happened. Our son was on the diet. You've got the American Academy of Pediatrics, that criminal organization that sits there. And once Jenny McCarthy started talking about the gluten-free, casein-free diet, all of a sudden they threw out this study. Oh, there's no proof that that works. The proof is the fact that after my son was on the gluten-free, casein-free diet for 6 months, he said his first word in 4.5 years, or in 3.5 years. So there's my proof. I don't need a criminal organization like the AAP telling me what works for my son and what doesn't. They've already lost my trust.
Well, look, we forced them to put on Prozac that in the trials it causes suicide. They knew that since Eli Lilly did the test back in 1980. They knew that aspartame, it took them 3 times to get it approved. I mean, it killed the monkeys they gave it to in the 70s. They know all of this, and it's more than just money. They're doing a test to see if they can brain damage and hurt people and then just get away with it. And everybody wonders why cancer's up several thousand%, and diabetes and brain damage and neurological disorders and all of this. And it's big pharma. It's the eugenicist. I mean, I've got all the quotes, the documents. It's far worse than them just being cold-blooded. You know, when the CDC found out about the brain damage, they said, oh, my God, we got to cover this up and protect our kids. But above them, they're just the bureaucrats. This is a very cold-blooded operation. What's your view on that?
Alex, I love what you just said about the eugenists. So many people, even those that feel like they're awakened and enlightened to the New World Order, they still think that these vaccines are all about profit. And that is just a byproduct, a little added bonus to these psychopath idiots out there. This is eugenics at its best. The worst thing that can happen to this tyrannical system is an educated public, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're dumbing down society. They're either making them sick, which when you make them sick, hey, that's an added bonus because they're going to be on a bunch of pharmaceuticals for the rest of their lives and let that kill them, or they're going to be so devastated physically and immunologically that they're not going to be worth anything. The parents are not going to be worth anything because they're going to spend their entire time and their entire fortune taking care of their children. They're not going to be paying attention to what's going on as the tyrannical idiots are taking over. We are being dumbed down. That's exactly what's happening. ADD, ADHD, Risperdal, Ritalin, the vaccine, the cancer, and the sterilizing drugs in the vaccines. This is all about population control and populist control. That's what it's about. The profits are just a good byproduct. And
what's insane is in our library here, we have over 200 books written by Nobel Prize winners, world leaders, UN documents, where they say in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, diet, injunctions, injections, we're going to dumb people down, we're going to do it, we're going to give people degenerative diseases and then give them treatments. In fact, there's the quote, diet, injections, and injunctions will combine, that's a Nobel Prize winner, from a very early age to produce the sort of character, the sort of beliefs that authorities consider desirable, and any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. And we've got some David Rockefeller quotes we'll get to, and then also some Rockefeller documents about sterilant and the vaccines. And this is what happened to your son. And I've talked to the geneticist, I've talked to the scientist, you know, obviously as much as I do or more, because it happened to you. You know, I have to cover all the areas of research. But what happens is, and any doctor will tell you this the world over, female children are much tougher than male children because females have to be able to have a child. That's why women gain weight quicker than men, because in a starvation situation, women are just tougher than men. Not in a fist fight, but in starvation, disease. It's well known. Women are way more stronger than men. They have a much thicker blood-brain barrier. It takes more poison to kill a woman, on average, depending on the type of poison, than it does a man. This is known the world over in all mammal species. And so it's very simple. That mercury and other chemicals are able to get across the blood-brain barrier. The autoimmune response in the gut from the viruses that are in there is able to have a greater effect, a bigger autoimmune response in men. and the system knows this. Your son, who by the grace of God and your researches has reversed a lot of this, he was somebody that, oh my God, we overcooked this potato in the oven. And I hate to use terms like that with your son, but for other parents out there who haven't gone through this yet, most children, it's supposed to be a basic IQ reduction, just a conk on the head. And then they add the bisphenol A and all the other cocktails to this. And it's just so cold-blooded. But again,
able to perpetuate that fraud simply by the fact that parents aren't educating themselves. The main reason that I'm where I am right now is because I didn't educate myself. I trusted the doctors. That's why I'm in the position I am in now. But a lot of parents are waking up due to your show and websites and Dr. Tenpenny and everybody out there doing what they're doing. They're educating the parents, and parents are starting to realize slowly but surely that this is not the case.
And that shows, if they're lying about this, what else are they lying about? I mean, that's super creepy. They can get so many people to lie.
The school districts actually get money for 100% vaccinated kids. For each child that is vaccinated per the CDC schedule, a lot of these school districts get money for that. Now, where do you think that money's coming from? It's not from the taxpayers. It's from the pharmaceutical industry.
Which we
busted down her door, and they had a tank in the front yard. This is the kind of thing we're going to see more and more often, but we're going to see less of it if people like the mother, Rachel Garman, stands up and tells these people enough's enough.
Well, you're right. Continuing here, there's no doubt they're running the hoax that it's illegal to not vaccinate. What's your view on that attempted fraud?
Well, you're to acquiesce.
I've talked to countless parents that call and say, they're going to kick my child out and charge me for truancy. And I say, wait a minute. They're going to kick them out and charge them with truancy. There's a waiver. And they'll say, really? They'd lie to me, the school nurse, the principal? And I say, what state are you in? I'm in Tennessee. I'm in California. Type in California exemption. They type it in. They go, there it is. They're lied to me. And they go in and say, here's the form. I know you have it in that file cabinet. And they go, oh, you're absolutely right. I mean,
it is not law. If you're an educated parent, they're not going to try to bully you into vaccinating. My school district right now sends, for all three of my kids that are still in school, they send me the signed exemption forms and just ask me to sign them and send them back. No other parent that's not educated will they do that to. They will simply tell them, no shots, no school, that's it. If you're educated, they're more than willing